Hello chess friends and welcome to Zarov's chess channel and welcome to the life and chess games of Magnus Carlsen. So in this series we're following Magnus Carlsen's life, Magnus Carlsen's games through his career, and today I wanted to show you a very important step also in Magnus Carlsen's career in which he gained his first international master norm at the age of 12. He gained that very important norm in the Qxd4 tournament in 2003, and today I wanted to show you really a cool game that he played in this tournament. Although Magnus didn't win the tournament, but I think he had great success. He finished this very nice tournament on the 6th place, and if you can see, he left also some intermasters and grandmasters behind him in this particular tournament, so he already had some great success now against top rated players, and he, as I said, finished on the 6th place. I think it's a great accomplishment with 7 points out of the possible 9. He lost only one game, and I think that was really one of the most important steps in Magnus Carlsen's career, because basically he got his international master norm very easily. He got that norms by playing several tournaments, and he played then after that very good. After that international master norm, he gained also his grandmaster title, but we'll come to that in the later stage of this very nice series. So let's see the game that I wanted to show you today. It was played against Berg Olaf. Here we'll see how Magnus really was already creative. He opened the position in a very early stage of the game, which I really like, because when you play chess, sometimes you don't want to make mistakes, you don't want to go into unknown territory, you just want to play calm and safe games. Here Magnus, at the age of 12, he opened the position in a very early stage and played a very aggressive game against his opponent. So let's see the game. We have E4 by Magnus, we have C5 by Olaf Berg, we have knight to F3, D6, and after D4, C takes D4, knight takes queen takes D4, we have knight to C6, and after bishop to B5, we have this so-called checkover variation, which is a very aggressive attack, and after A6, you have to do something with your bishop, of course. You have to take out the knight because your queen is hanging. That's why bishop takes C6, and after B takes C6, knight to C3. Okay, let's evaluate the position immediately. White has already 3 pieces out, which is a great development. You see, we are one move far away from castling. Still, we can maybe develop the bishop and maybe even queenside castle here. So 2 more moves and white has finished the whole development. Black, on the other hand, has the bishop pair, which is a good thing in an opening, but you see, all of these pieces are still on the 8th rank. Nothing lost for black, but you have to be fast now in development, or white will punish you. That's why, first of all, C5 was played, kicking away the queen, queen to D3, and now bishop to B7. Aiming against this E4 pawn, but there is also one problem in black's position. If you, for instance, would try to cover this d5 square. For instance, Magnus could, in one particular position, jump on this d5 square. In order to prevent these ideas, you have to play e6 or knight to f6. For instance, if you play knight to f6 immediately, I think we can challenge immediately this knight and even threaten to double some pawns here on the f and on the f file. So by maybe playing the move e6, you weakening your d6 pawn. Then after queenside castling, white's attack would be simply coordinated around this weak d6 square. So there are really several problems now for black here. I would rather be white here if I have to choose. I like simply this fast developing style by Magnus Carlsen. After the move bishop to b7, now Magnus played again the bishop on the most active square, on the square g5. And if you, for instance, play, let's see this continuation, if you, for instance, play the move knight to f6, then we can simply take out the knight. So easy it seems. After g takes f6, now after queenside castling, you see we have now the opportunity to occupy this very weak d5 square. If, for instance, this bishop takes out the knight on d5, then we will have sort of a position in which we have a bad bishop, which is a little bit blocked out by this central pawn structure. So this checkover variation is really a great opening, I think. You see how problematic it can be for black. That's why in the game, after bishop to g5, we have g6. Here black is preparing bishop to g7, and then after that knight to f6, so he wouldn't have to recapture with the pawn the knight. If of course Magnus Carlsen takes, then you don't have any more this threat to get this double pawn situation. In the game now, Magnus simply queenside castled, and now you see it's move 10. Magnus has finished all of his development, all the 3 stages of the development. He has developed his pieces, he has castled, and he has removed the queen from the first rank, so he has the rook connected. This is now a perfect activity so far by Magnus. So after the move f6, it seems like a strange move, but okay, black is trying to kick away this very annoying bishop. After bishop to h4, we have knight to h6 by Olaf Berg, and now Magnus tried a very nice move, e5, cracking the position immediately. Great thing. You see now the problems about this move. After f takes e5, we have knight takes e5, sacrificing the knight, d takes e5, and here queen to e3. Queen to c7 doesn't work because you get bishop to e5, and you get the fork and queen and the rook, so you lose a very important piece. Queen to b6 doesn't work also because, let's see possible continuation. After queen to b6, we have bishop takes h6, and basically you have to trade off the stars for bishops. After queen takes h6, let's look at this position. Look how many pawn islands black has here in the position. These are really weaknesses in the position. There are also some weak squares here around black's king. So again, I think this is a completely winning game here for white. Magnus Carlsen would punish this position for sure. So that's why after this move queen to e3, his opponent chose to play the best variation, and believe me or not, after this particular line, the evaluation is slightly better for black, because you have to sacrifice the queen here, and here Olaf Berg played e takes f4, attacking the queen. Here rook takes d8 was played, rook takes d8, and now queen takes f4. And if we evaluate the position now, black has the rook and 2 bishops for the queen, which is playable. If we count how many points these pieces are evaluated, for instance, the rook is worth 5 points and the bishops are worth for 3 points. So here black has 11 points for Magnus Carlsen's queen, which could be counted like 9 or 10 points. So believe me or not, Magnus went into a very wild line here against his opponent, and if black plays this game very accurate, Magnus I don't think has anything here. But it was also a very cool thing to see that Magnus goes into a very direct line. Of course it's good for us, then we can watch some attractive games. After queen takes f4, we have knight to f5, very natural move by black, cementing the knight on a very active square, and again with the preparation to further cement the knight on the square d4. So queen to a4, attacking the king. Rook to d7 was played. The funny thing is, if you for instance try king to f7, then you lose the bishop. We have queen to b3, at double attack against the king and the bishop. You cannot also cover on d5 because we'll simply take out with the knight. So that's why rook to d7 had to be played, and now Magnus uses this moment and pins the rook, and now knight to d4, cutting off this very important d file. So queen to c4, here e6 was played by Magnus' opponent, trying to hang on to this c5 pawn, because the c5 pawn is very important. It's the support of this outposted knight. So e6, good move here by black, and now king to b1. And here I think the best way to proceed for black is to take out simply this g2 pawn, splitting the pawns. These are now also weaknesses in white's position, so you have to take them out. I think at least this g2 pawn. If Magnus, for instance, would have taken this a6 pawn, then we have bishop to e7, a natural developing move. And now after knight to b5, we could go simply king to f7, knight takes d, c takes d4, and again I think black has regrouped. Now we have even possibilities to play bishop to f6, bishop to d5. These bishops would be aiming against black's king, maybe go with the rook on the b file, creating also dangerous attacks. So I think this bishop to g2 is simply a better line for black. But in the game, after the move queen to a4, Magnus' opponent tried to move bishop to c6, and now queen takes a6. We have king to f7 again, regrouping a little bit. queenside castling is, castling is also an option, but here the king is perfectly fine because Magnus doesn't have a light square bishop, maybe which could aim here against this e6. So that's why here f3 finally by Magnus Carlsen. So his opponent didn't use the opportunity and didn't take out this g2 pawn. In the game, rook to b8, which is also a very good move, getting maybe sort of a battery here and trying to play against this weak b2 pawn. In the game, rook to e1 play by Magnus. Maybe he's trying here to do something around this e6 square. And in the game, finally now rook to b7 played by Olaf Berg. So b3 had to be played in order to close the b file, and now rook to b6 attacking the queen, and Magnus simply retreated with the queen on this square d3. So if queen to c4 would have been played by Magnus, it seems that Magnus has some attacks against his e6. Even king to g8 is here a possibility, because you may think that here Magnus has some tactical possibilities with the move rook to e6, but it's not a problem, I think, to hang on to this position for black after rook takes e6, knight takes e6, queen takes e6, and now king to f8 solves, I think, all of the positional problems here for black. Magnus doesn't have any checks anymore here. Still we could try maybe to open somehow the b file with the potential c4 move, or we could try maybe again regroup and try maybe an attack through the a file. So but in the game, after the move queen to d3, bishop to b7 was played, and now very important move h4 by Magnus. So you see how important it would have been that, for black to take out now this g2 pawn, because now Magnus can use some pawn storm possibilities and try to open the position with some g4 h5 ideas, then maybe try to attack this h7. If Magnus wouldn't have this g2 pawn, it wouldn't be possible, but now pawn storm is possible. If you, for instance, take here the bishop takes h4, then you get rook to h1, and again some dangerous attacks through the h file. So that's why bishop to a6 was played, and maybe a better idea here for black would have been to maybe try knight to f5 immediately, not to play first this move bishop to a6, maybe trying to close the position here on light squares with the move knight to f5. This bishop to a6 is an aggressive move, but basically it's a mistake, because again it simply improves the position of the queen. Again, bishop to b7 doesn't work because you have this in between check with queen to f4. In the game, bishop to f6 was played, and now finally queen to f4, trying to get our knight on e4 and again attack this very weak bishop here on f6. Rook to b7 was played. We have knight to e4 and now e5, trying to hang on to the bishop, and now simply queen to h6. Bishop to g7, trying to attack the queen, but now we have queen takes h7, and in this position Magnus is simply better, because black didn't play very active. Black didn't play the accurate game here. In the game, rook to b8 was played by Olaf Berg, and now knight to g5. This queen and the knight are working perfectly fine together. The king is really endangered here. In the game, king to f6 was played, and here Magnus had really the opportunity to close the game immediately to win the game. He had this opportunity to push the pawn here on h5. This splits really apart this the whole defense of blacks. After potential king takes g5, we have queen takes g7, and if you, for instance, take out the pawn, then we have queen to e7, a very important move which closes the diagonal here, which closes this very important two squares, and now there is this serious threat of checkmating immediately with the move rook to h1. If you, for instance, try rook to h8, again it's immediate checkmate with rook to h1. If you try, for instance, something like g5 here, again it's a forced checkmate. You have queen to h7 the check. If you bring the rook in between here on h6, then again rook to h1 leads into a checkmate. Tricky stuff. You see, as said, after the move king to f6, Magnus didn't play the move h5. He played the move f4, which is also good. Is again trying to open the position against black's king. We have e takes f4, and now very nice move, deflection move by Magnus, deflecting the king from the defense of the bishop. Rook to e7, king takes e7, queen takes e7, and now king to d6. Knight to e4, you have several choices. Basically, I think even king to d5 is better. In the game, Olaf Berg played king to c6, and now we have queen takes g6. And again, king to b5 is simply better, I think, because you get your... It seems that the king is more endangered here, but it's really not, because you have to play something like queen to g5 now, and maybe with rook to c6, maybe, but just maybe, black can hang on to this position. But in the game, Olaf Berg played the move king to b7. He didn't go with the king on b5. He went with the king on b7, and now it's basically game over, because we have knight takes c5, attacking the king, king to a8, and now queen to e4, attacking the king. You have to cover with your knight, because your knight is under attack, so bishop to b7 doesn't work. You have to play knight to e6, and now we have a very nice move, the fork on both of these rooks. We have rook to b7, knight takes b6, rook takes b6, and now h5. The pass pawn here, which is basically uncatchable. In the game, king to b7 was played, but now simply pushing forward, h6, king to c7, and now h5. And in the game, rook to b8 was played, and you can pause the video and try to find now the best move, the winning move that Magnus, of course, found here. It's a great splitting move. It really breaks everything in black's position. It's the move queen takes f4. Here you have to cover with you have to go somewhere with your king, and if that happens, we'll simply take out the rook and then promote to h8. You cannot bring, of course, the knight in between. The same thing happens, so you just lose another knight, so it's not a problem. And after this move, Magnus Carlsen opponent resigned. Great game by Magnus, very aggressive in the opening. Still, there were also some slight inaccuracies by him, by his opponent also. So they were, of course, young players. They were 12-year-old. But here you saw Magnus Carlsen's opening preparations, that he liked to play these aggressive lines, which I really liked. His playing style was very aggressive, and as I said, in this tournament he won his first international master norm. Will follow also his other tournaments in which he finally gained his international master title in chess. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll continue to follow Magnus Carlsen's career through the years. Here's the link to my previous videos of this very nice series, and you can also watch my other best chess games that I've commented so far, the best chess games of all time, if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.